The International Hot Rod Association presents the 18th Annual U.S. Open Nationals from Rockingham International Dragway, Rockingham, North Carolina. Hi, everybody. This is John Lundberg at Rockingham International Dragway, Rockingham, North Carolina, for the 10th of 12 major IHRA 1988 drag racing events, as ESPN Speed World brings you the U.S. Open Nationals here at The Rock. There's a change taking place here this weekend. Ricky Smith has absolutely dominated Pro Stock qualifying and is a heads-on favorite to take his 4th World Championship in that category. But here this weekend, second-generation drag racer Tim Neighbors is top qualifier with a Chevrolet. And here to bring us the details of qualifying in all our professional brackets is our broadcast partner, Brett Kepner. Brett?
Well, John, like you said, it's been an unusual weekend, but with traction and air quality much better during elimination rounds, we should see some phenomenal times and some exciting performances. In funny car eliminator, Ed the Ace McCulloch's domination continues with his 5.71 second, 264-mile-per-hour qualifying run leading the field. But interestingly, the number 2 spot is occupied by a young independent, an unsponsored racer, Frank Kramberger, in the Philadelphia Flyer Mustang. In fact, McCulloch's strongest rival in the point series this year, Dale Poldy in the Chief Auto Parts Oldsmobile, is all the way down in the number 4 position. Upsets may be in the making here at the U.S. Open Nationals. John, the traction and air quality here during elimination should make this an upset-riddled event.
In the pits now with a guy who just set a track record here at 5:20, seeking to card an upset of his own. Ladies and gentlemen, Pat Patterson now with Gene Snow in the pits.
Well, thanks very much, gentlemen. We are just about ready for today's action at Rockingham, North Carolina. The number 1 qualifier with a 5:20, a brand new track record here at Rockingham in the Top Fuel Division. It's Fort Worth, Texas, Gene Snow. And Gene, I know that you had the track record last year. You came back this year. You've set a new track record at 5:20. The racetrack is obviously going to be pretty good to you.
Yeah, the track's real good. The weather's a little bit cool. This is also a brand new car, second time out. Last week it went 5 flat. We went 5:20 qualifying yesterday. We're real pleased with it.
Well, lately you've been the guy that makes the predictions as to what we might see at a particular racetrack. You think you can get into the teens today?
I think so. If something doesn't go wrong, we got a little power left, and if the traction's good, I think we'll see maybe a 5:15.
Well, good luck to you today. Gene Snow, one of the best in the Top Fuel Division and has done extremely well on the IHRA Tour this year. We'll be back with the start of this one at Rockingham in just a few moments.
U.S. Open Nationals at Rockingham, North Carolina. Top Fuel Eliminator quarterfinal rounds. John Lundberg and Brett Kepner along with Pat Patterson. And we're going to have number 4 versus number 5 qualify here. On the right side of your screen, Bill Mullins, number 4 at 5:57, and Hank Endries, number 5 on the left side of your screen, 5:58. Brett?
Well, John, there's Hank Endries at the Jeff Bernstein Racing Florida-based Top Fuel dragster that ironically was Gene Snow's World Championship winning Top Fueler from last year. But this is the first race that Hank Endries has qualified for since his notorious crash at the Northern Nationals in Milan, Michigan, 1987. Most of the ESPN viewers remember seeing Endries and John Kerry's machine tumbling end over the guardrail. It was a horrendous experience for Hank, but he's obviously back. Now, Bill Mullins is back with his high-gear-only transmission in the blue and orange machine. And the Pelham, Alabama veteran is exceptionally tough. He's never one to be taken lightly.
We understand Mullins, who's staging now at the bottom of your screen, has a new sponsor here late in the 88 season, Tom Hess, who has helped Eddie Hill. They're out of the gate, and it's Endries out first. Mullins is going to try to catch him. Endries moving. Here comes Mullins. Win. Time for Bill Mullins, 5:34 at 255.10.
That's a career best for Bill Mullins, even throwing the supercharger drive belt off at the finish line. Now the ultimate illustration of horsepower and incredible smoky burnout. This is the Delaware destroyer himself, John Kerry. And he'll be up against a driver who performs flawlessly each and every year at Rockingham International Dragway from Boynton Beach, Florida, Paul Smith, the rent-a driver who is back at the wheel of Chuck Etchel's dragster.
As he backs into stage, the two guys are 3 positions and 11/100ths of a second apart, with Smith, who we're now looking at the quicker of the two. Now, we're going to take a look at John Kerry's engine only to tell you that he does not have a McGee 4-cammer in it this weekend. He has the engine, but apparently has decided to stick with a more tried-and-true combination as Paul Smith pulls forward to stage.
You have to remember, John, that both these guys right now are on top of their game. Both are running solid 5:20s. Paul Smith in the Chuck Etchel's team car has already run over 275 miles per hour in the last couple of weeks. Both of these drivers are very happy with what they've got in the cars right now. It should be an excellent battle. Both are excellent at getting off the starting line. The tree goes to green, and Paul Smith leads first by a huge margin, almost a 1/10 of a second hole shot. A little bit of smoke out of the pipes, but Smith still drives away. And the elapsed times would indicate it being a little closer than it really was because of Smith's hole shot. The 5:53 wins it.
We're looking at the Cable Value Network Top Fuel Dragster, number 2 in the program, with the recovered Dennis Forcell at the wheel. And Brett backing in now, the starting line grenade of Holcomb and Harris.
There's no question, John, as you will attest to, Clayton Harris, the crew chief for Richard Holcomb's Georgia-based Top Fuel Dragster, is without a doubt one of the more unconservative people in this sport. They always set that car up to run the low elapsed time of the event, and if nothing else, the car is literally on the edge every time it goes down, whereas Forcell is one of the conservative with his crew chief.
We're looking at raw nitromethane coming out of the pipes, up to 90% of it through the engine. Rockingham International Dragway, Rockingham, North Carolina. Funny car quarterfinals, John Lundberg, Brett Kepner, and Pat Patterson as the Nitro Bandit takes on the Chief Auto Parts Oldsmobile.
Well, Brad and Dexter Tuttle with the Nitro Bandit Mustang, and of course Dale Pulte, the 3-time IHRA World Champion of the Chief Auto Parts Olds, are both capable of presenting one of the best races of this round. One of the reasons for that is that Brad Tuttle's Nitro Bandit has stepped up considerably in the last few weeks. In fact, he's done tremendously well in the Winston Series, and I think for one of the first times in his career, John is going to be able to offer Dale Pulte a real race.
I think Pulte may be a little bit more aware of Tuttle's presence at this event. The two cars are qualified within 0.008 of a second of each other. And if there's going to be any way the Chief Auto Parts car is going to make a major gain in the points race, it's got to be right here, right now.
It's interesting to note, I guess, that Tuttle qualified one of 2 different Ford Mustangs in this funny car field. There aren't that many Ford-bodied funny cars out there anymore, let alone of the Mustang variety. They leave the starting line, and it looks like an even start, but Tuttle starts to smoke the tires, and that's all Dale Pulte needed. Driving through with the quickest run in the history of this racetrack for a funny car, 5.51 seconds, John.
Incredible win for Pulte as he advances to the next round, and here come the next 2 cars. And it's going to be Jerry Caminito's Blue Thunder against Chuck Etchells and the Future Force race car. These 2 guys ready to race now, moving into stage. They're away. Etchells moves first, but Caminito's coming on hard. Caminito right beside Etchells. Caminito in the lead. Jerry Caminito wins at 570. The speed, 248.13.
Well, losing 578 for Etchells, that's one of the closest races of this event. Now, in the far lane is the surprise number 2 qualifier, the unsponsored independent in another Ford Mustang, Frank Kramberger's Philadelphia Flyer. And he's up against a driver who came back from some pretty horrendously bad luck here at the spring race at Rockingham. R.C. Sherman and Nick Bonifani's Ray Festus Olds. They leave the starting line. Both cars boil the tires, in and out of the throttle for both drivers, and R.C. Sherman upsets the number 2 qualifier. Look at the smoke. Man, those guys had a lot of problems down there, and indeed some more problems for Kramberger, as a little bit of excess oil is apparently ignited in the exhaust headers, but that's nothing serious. It'll all burn off. But I'll tell you, Kramberger had a chance to really perform here this weekend, but tire smoke put him out of the show in this very first round of competition. What an upset for Sherman.
Here's the final heat in Funny Car Eliminator this round. Ed McCulloch in the Miller High Life Oldsmobile, number 1 qualifier.
Indeed, the toughest funny car in IHRA competition this year, having reset both the IHRA World Elapsed time and speed records at some point during the season, will be taking on one of the legends of this sport, John, in the blue Trans Am.
A novel on the bizarre side of drag racing could centralize or feature Richard Tharp's lifestyle. Backing into stage now, Ed the Ace McCulloch, a guy who had his wild years, but in combination with Bernie Federley, has come up with the most fruitful performance in funny cars ever. 5 1/4 seconds, 280 miles per hour in the quarter mile. At this point in the season, Brett, they seem to be unbeatable.
Well, as you alluded to earlier, John, Richard Tharp, the driver of the Kodiak Tobacco Blue Max Pontiac, is indeed one of the true outlaws in the sport of drag racing. 20 years ago, he was a killer in this sport and has just recently returned to this high-tech act.
It gets down to this. Russian roulette with 4,000 horsepower race cars. These guys spend less than 0.1% of their racing lives in actual competition. You constantly dot I's and cross T's. Crewman doing that right now to the parachute packs on the Miller High Life Oldsmobile as Bernie Federley motions his driver forward to stage. And Bizarro himself, Richard Tharp, stages the Kodiak Blue Max, ready to sprint down the quarter mile. Federley moves in to eyeball the event, and we see a little smoke coming up from behind the blower scoop on the Blue Max. That could signal engine trouble for Richard Tharp as the Texan gets ready to race to California. All eyes on the starting line. Green, out of the chute they go. The Blue Max moving, but out of the race as here comes Ed McCulloch. And McCulloch does it again. Walks away at 5:52, 269 miles per hour.
Well, he's keeping pace with Dale Pulte, only 1/100 of a second behind the Chief Auto Parts Olds. That's going to be a battle in funny car next round.
And the crowd has barely time to breathe as we now go to Pro Stock quarterfinals. And here it comes, Ricky Smith, the Motorcraft Quality Parts Ford Thunderbird, against a guy who's having the year of his life in drag racing, Harry Scribner, Brett.
I'll tell you, the defending world champion Ricky Smith has had his way with Pro Stockers all year long. The 707-inch Thunderbird takes on the 500 cubic inch Pontiac-powered Chevy Camaro of Scribner from Simi Valley, California. You got to hand it to Ricky. He's been on top of the game, even with his fourth qualifying position here, which was somewhat of a surprise. Scribner moves in. The green light comes on. Scribner may have gotten a little bit of a hole shot there. Ricky Smith actually falling back. Scribner trying to stay with it on the top end. Scribner beats the world champion, 741 to 743. John, for the first time since the Spring Nationals in 1984, 35 consecutive IHRA national events, Ricky Smith goes out before the semifinals. Unreal upset for Harry Scribner.
The crew is obviously distraught. I mean, when you do this 35 times in a row, you never fully expect it. But he was upset by a Chevrolet. The fans are going crazy. And here's a guy, what else does he have to say to us? Obviously, the season of his life, Harry Scribner in the next round. Incredible.
He's got to be completely beside himself. That's incredible. Nobody does that in IHRA. Here's the #1 qualifier, the Pontiac-powered Camaro in the near lane of Tim Neighbors against the killer Warren Johnson's AC Delco Olds, and a red light on the starting line for Warren Johnson. WJ leaves too early, and the youngster from the state of Georgia, Tim Neighbors, in the near lane with a 742 will advance to the next round. And Warren Johnson red lighted by a bunch.
At the top of your screen, the 722 cubic inch Chevy Beretta of Carlton Phillips. Bottom of your screen, the ICS Racers Tape car of Charlie Garrett. They're out of the gate. Garrett with an 800th of a second hole shot. The 722 Beretta trying to catch him. Will he do it? Pontiac wins. Time 7:53. Phillips ran a quicker time of 7:45, but at a 16,000th of a second margin due to the hole shot, it was Garrett through the quarter mile first.
I'll tell you, when you get that big of a hole shot, believe me, you're going to have to be able to run a lot quicker just to get around somebody. Here's Kenny Koretsky in the Exxon Superflow Mac-Guard Chevy Camaro against Morris Johnson Jr., two of the best in the Eastern Seaboard, side by side at half track, and Morris Johnson's Trans Am manages to pull out a one-car length lead with a 7.41 second run. And John, every one of the winners of that round were within 600ths of a second. It's going to be close.
Top Fuel semifinals next. U.S. Open Nationals, Rockingham, North Carolina. John Lundberg, Brett Kepner, and Pat Patterson. You're looking at Paul Smith making his pre-run burnout. In the beginning round of the Top Fuel semifinals, he'll be racing Dennis Forcell. Forcell is qualified to run at the Fall Nationals in the $20,000 to win Angus Nitro Showdown. Here's Pat with Dennis Forcell.
Talking with Dennis Forcell, I know it's important from your standpoint to have people like Angus step up and sponsor special events for your division. Tell me about how important that program is to you.
Well, we consider the program very important from the standpoint going to that race is like running two races at the cost of only one race. And at the same time, it's an opportunity to get more exposure for our sponsor. And hopefully, we feel we got a good shot at winning that. And obviously, we can certainly use the money.
As far as thinking about this kind of a show throughout the year to get qualified for it, is it something that's in your mind all year long?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they've been good enough to put up a sizable purse that makes it almost imperative that you think about it. And it's, like I said, it's something that's, very good for the racer and hopefully be as good for the sponsor.
Well, Dennis Forcell backs in from his pre-race burnout. And Brett, I think Forcell's got his work cut out for him here. He's running the whole shot king of Top Fuel.
Well, that's about the only advantage Paul Smith has, John, because Forcell has indicated throughout this event that he's got about a 1/10 of a second in elapsed time advantage over Paul Smith. But as we pointed out in the first round, Smith does exceptionally well at this racetrack. For some reason, Rockingham is Paul's lucky piece of asphalt. Now, Chuck Etchell's crew, including Paul's son, by the way, who operates both the Top Fueler and Funny Car from crewman level, will be praying at this point that Paul can come through with another one of those great starting line reactions that won him a race in the first round. But Forcell, with crew chief Larry Fraser, has the ability to make the horsepower that it will take to drive around almost any hole shot.
So I guess you could call it horsepower versus technique.
Very much so. No question about it. Smith has got to get the starting line advantage to have a chance.
Well, we'll find out very shortly. They move into stage. They're out, and he does it again. Paul Smith ignites from the starting line, blows Forcell's doors off, and sprints to the win. And again, a 5:54. Forcell ran quicker at 5:46. Now watch the starting line. Smith committed to the hole shot, gets it right there. about a quarter of a car length as they leave the starting line, and there's the combined time victory win, Brett.
Well, when you add up the reaction time, the time it took the driver to leave the starting line, Smith left the line 28 thousandths of a second after the green came on. That translates to a victory margin at the finish line of 62 thousandths of a second. His reactions are absolutely flawless, John.
How do you get a cannon any more loaded to blow a guy off than Gene Snow? What kind of shell do you use? What kind of power do you put together? Well, Bill Mullins has been thinking about that between rounds. And here comes the champ, 520 to 517. Gene Snow at it again.
You know, Mullins at this point also has to get a hole shot. There's absolutely nothing he can do as far as the lap's time potential is concerned against Gene Snow. But it looks like we've got something seriously wrong as Bill Mullins' crew is pushing the Pelham, Alabama dragster back away from the water burnout area. John, apparently they're done. It'll be a single run for Gene Snow into the final round. And that is a tough break for Mullins. Remember, we saw him go a career best elapsed time in the first round, about 0.2 of a second quicker than he's been going recently.
The heartbreak continues for Bill Mullins. The question for Snow fans, what's he going to do? He's obvious at this point, racing himself and no one else. The point he begins to prove at this point, I believe, is one to himself. Just how quick and just how fast can this non-transmission race car, its second weekend in competition in the sport, go?
Well, the starter Jim Blakely looks on, the man who actually activates the Christmas tree during each and every run. Snow also has to battle against lane choice. Remember, the quicker of the two winners going into the final receives his choice of lane. Snow will probably run it out the back door just to see how much horsepower the track can hold. Obviously quite a bit. No smoke off the starting line whatsoever. He's going to drive it all the way out, shutting off just a little bit before the finish line, but it's another new track elapsed time record. 5.15 seconds in the speed, John, down 10 miles an hour to 263.
I mean, he only ran the car 1,200 feet. Well, we'll find out what's going to happen in the funny car semifinal. The Rock, the U.S. Open Nationals 18th version at Rockingham, North Carolina, this funny car eliminator semifinal round. And the body goes down on funny car driver R.C. Sherman in his newly bodied Ray Bestis Clutches Oldsmobile funny car. Time for a burnout. And he's going to be racing Jerry Caminito in his Blue Thunder race car. And Brett, what's going to happen between these two guys?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. There is a whole bunch of desire between these two machines. Neither driver has been in a final in years. As a matter of fact, Jerry Caminito has never been in a national championship drag race finale. R.C. Sherman would love to put the Ray Bestis Clutches Oldsmobile back into the winner's circle, especially at this racetrack, after suffering that horrendous fire that we talked about earlier back at the Pro-Am Nationals here at Rockingham in May. Now, Jerry Caminito does not receive any sponsorship from anybody, yet is a professional driver. He doesn't just do this part-time. This is his sole amount of income. R.C. Sherman, of course, with Nick Boninfante, the Caroni receiver, receiving quite a bit of assistance from Ray Bestis, but the Blue Thunder machine receives only a little bit of either contingency or actual product participation from the sponsors who put the decals on the side of the car. There is Caminito's only crewman other than his wife, Marion. Believe me, Jerry Caminito sees his first national event final only a quarter of a mile away. R.C. Sherman, on the other hand, is always a tough runner.
Sherman with a point to prove. Caminito would love to make it in the final. They're out of the gate, and Caminito goes into the final as Sherman red lights. He smokes the tires, sees the wind light in the other lane, and clicks her off about 1,100 feet down course.
I don't know what Sherman was thinking about. He left the starting line before the Christmas tree was ever activated. Caminito runs an excellent 576. At mid-range, you can see Sherman smoking the tires, not realizing apparently that he left before the green. You can also see a couple of cylinders misfiring in Caminito's car, but RC shuts her down. Caminito goes through for the automatic win, and his crew has got to be absolutely elated. But, John, just the fact that RC Sherman is back racing at this track is a miracle.
Absolutely. We're looking now at the horrendous fire that RC suffered here in the spring event here at the Rock, and you see the crew now trying to put it out. And I think we're going to have a little discussion now about what's involved in the increasing emphasis on safety in the sport of drag racing. Yep, let's go to the pits and talk with Pat Patterson about what we're doing to make safety a more significant subject in 1988.
As we know, safety is all that much important for all forms of auto racing. If there is a fire in a funny car, and if the body of the funny car cannot be lifted off to free the driver, then that's where this hole comes into play. This is a 6-inch hole that's cut in both sides of the funny car body so that the fire hose can be put inside the car so that we might keep the fire from burning the driver. Now, last year there was a smaller hole here. This year, it was the rules of the sanctioning body to go to a much larger hole. Once again, the idea here is to be able to get the fire hose comfortably inside the car so that if there is a fire, we can at least protect the driver while the body is pried off of the dragster. Safety has become the number one concentrated effort to try to protect the drivers as well as the fans that are at all of the motorsports events around the country. Joining me is Dick Otte, and Dick works with American Godiva. Dick actually has helped develop a tool that has saved a lot of people's lives, and it has really been an attribute to racing because the tool was developed in racing, and now you can find it almost everywhere. Tell me a little bit about the Jaws of Life.
Well, the Jaws of Life was started by Hearst Performance, George Hearst, back in 1970. And as a result of that, over the years, it was developed for racing. And today, the tool is used worldwide, almost every city, county around the country. So anybody that has an accident that's trapped in an automobile, you'll find a hydraulic rescue tool of this type being used to extricate them from the automobile.
Well, I know on behalf of everyone who enjoys watching racing and on behalf of everybody who's ever had to have this equipment get them out of the car, we're sure happy for your work and for everybody's interest in getting a tool put together that can save lives. Gentlemen?
Well, the red flag is up, Brett. It's Ed McCulloch against Dale Pulding.
This is probably the toughest battle of the entire funny car eliminator category here this weekend. The winner will go on to take on Jerry Caminito in the championship round, but man, this will be a battle to determine a winner that will face Caminito.
No prisoners. Ed the Ace against Dale Pulding, three-time former IHRA Funny Car World Champion in the Chief Auto Parts Oldsmobile, and the Miller High Life car is going to try to get to the finish line first. They're out of the gate. McCulloch with good clutch to smokes the tires. Pulding is by him. Dale Pulding wins and goes into the final round with a 5:58, 255-mile-per-hour clocking, Brett.
His second straight 5.5-second run of eliminations, but pro stock action is coming up, and it's bound to be just as close when we
The 18th U.S. Open Nationals, and this is Morris Johnson Jr., upset king in pro stock of 1988. Low elapsed time in pro stock racing so far at 7:39. Let's see, at this point in the season, what Morris Johnson Jr. is thinking most about.
Pat, probably the biggest concerns coming in this race is equipment failure. We had the race Wednesday night in Norwalk to run. We're trying our best to just save parts to get through this race and Wednesday night because we won't have time for maintenance. Then we have another race the following weekend, so we have a real busy schedule. Just trying to save parts.
Well, Brett, obviously Charlie Garrett's got his work cut out for him racing Morris Johnson.
Well, Garrett in the ISC Racers State Trans Am there in the near lane has been one of the best at the whole shot business so far in the 1988 season. But Morris Johnson's a pretty incredible individual, a Vietnam vet who is realizing a life goal of driving a pro stocker on a national full-time basis. Morris Johnson has not been in a final round in IHRA racing since 1985, and Garrett's whole shot is going to be the difference in this race.
Well, Garrett's committed to that. Let's see if he can bring it off. Their stage, green, red for Charlie Garrett, and Morris Johnson Jr. goes into the final as Charlie Garrett cuts it way too fine, goes through the quarter-mile first, automatic win to Johnson at 7:46 and 184.
Well, Johnson Jr. 7:46 is a little bit of a slowdown for him. You can see the red light very clearly for Garrett in the left-hand lane. He left about 0.13 of a second before the green came on, and that's about a week early in drag racing.
As we look down the scoop, let's see how Tom, Dick, and Harry can do. The Scribner brothers against second-generation drag racer Tim Neighbors.
You know, Tim Neighbors' only national event victory came right here at Rockingham. He's got a kind of a Paul Smith type rapport with this particular piece of asphalt. The 689 cubic inch Pontiac engine in that red and white Chevy Camaro allowed it to qualify #1 here, and it's already run as quick as 7.41 seconds. But Scribner, the driver we saw runner-up at the Northern Nationals in Milan, Michigan, also is a whole shot artist. His ability to leave the starting line after the green light comes on is phenomenal.
I think what we ought to do is keep our eyes on the reaction timer for this race, Brett. I think you very correctly forecasted what may be the closest start of this entire drag race.
Well, you can see Scribner taking his good old time moving into the starting line beeves, just very, very cautiously bumping in, now bringing the RPMs up. Neighbors will be the last one to stage. They're ready. The Christmas tree goes green, virtually identical starting line reaction times. This will be a drag race to the finish line, side by side all the way, and Tim Neighbors just barely pulls out a win by about 0.02 of a second. What a battle. Look at that finish, about 2.5 feet. in an incredible Pro Stock semifinal match. Right now, let's switch to the pit area with Pat Patterson for this week's Quaker State Quick Fact and a look into drag racing innovation.
Well, guys, you know, we've talked throughout the year on ESPN about the computer technology used in drag racing, specifically the computers that are hooked to the engines that can actually give the crew and the driver an accurate reading as to what the engine is doing. Jerry Taylor from Virginia has got a computer system in his car now that actually shifts the transmission for him. And Jerry, if you would, explain to the viewing audience exactly what kind of a hookup this is, a system this is, and how it works.
All right, well, first I have a 5-speed manual transmission here. And its power supply comes first of all through the air bottle here on the side. And it comes over to the electric solenoids, the main supply. And then the electric solenoids are activated by the engine RPMs, which comes off the MSD box, which the same wire triggers the tachometer here. Then that main air supply comes in here. It goes to each cylinder individually as it's controlled by the automatic control box over here, which has your individual gears, RPM chips in it. You'll put a chip in for each gear, and when the RPMs get up to that number of chip you have in there, it'll shift each gear at that RPM. I was going to run an automatic and decided to go with straight stick, and once I learned that this system was available, it was the closest compromise between an automatic and a straight shift, I thought. It was automatically shifted, but it was still a manual transmission.
Next up, final round racing action. U.S. Open National. Brett, Greg Moss coming into the final has at an average lead of .501 and has 3 runs laid down at an average of 6.40 seconds.
That's true, but it didn't come all during eliminations. His biggest problem was qualifying for this field. The car was running horrible during qualifications, but once he got in, his crew chief Rick Hickman has really sorted out the green Trans Am from Missouri. In the semifinals, they ran returning veteran Chuck Cheeseman's brand new Chevy Corvette, wrenched by the Boggs brothers out of Ohio. And indeed, this race was really close to about the 300-foot mark, and then Moss drove away with the second quickest run of eliminations at that point, a 6:40. Now, his opponent in the final round will be Shad Wheeler. This little Chevy Corvette called the Little Thumper from Fredericktown, Ohio, took a single run in the semifinal round, but his opponent could not show. But this, by the way, John, is the second quickest Chevy-powered funny car in history. Anything in the 6.3s with a Chevrolet motor is astounding. And Wheeler went into his first ever national championship final round against the drivers finished #2 in the world for the last 2 straight years. They stage up. They leave the starting line. Moss with a very, very slight and a tire shake falls back only a couple of feet. Wheeler drives away. Moss gets beaten in the final as the supercharger drive belt sails off the green Trans Am. Shad Wheeler's 6.44 second run took his first ever national event victory.
It was great. I had some tire shake, but this is our first national win, and we're just...
Time to celebrate?
You got that right. It's really time to celebrate. Thank you.
Woo!
Now the top alcohol dragster final. Dennis Lucas, one of the finalists, had a single in the semifinal pass, but Bill Barney had the race of his life as Leo Porky Castellum gave him a real battle all the way to the finish line. Castellum, who'd never run under 6:60 in his life, is right with Barney to the finish, but Barney wins at 6:42, 2:15.98.
A great 6:44 for Leo Castellum. It was truly an amazing effort for the Southern California team. Now, as Bill Barney gets ready for the final, Denny Lucas took a bye run in the semifinal round. He used the run to check the track conditions. Now, in the first round, Lucas had run a 6.30 second pass. Here on this single effort, he runs 6.35 seconds. So he had a pretty substantial advantage over Bill Barney's Castrol GTX machine going into this final, John.
It's all up for grabs. These guys have raced each other before, and Barney is going to try to do something, who knows what, to try to get Lucas at the finish line. And let's see if he can bring it off. They're out of the gate. Good start as they sprint to the mid-range. It's all over. Denny Lucas is in the lead. Barney breaks, and Denny Lucas wins top alcohol dragster. The lap time 6:32 at 2:14. Denny Lucas talks with Pat at the turnoff road.
The car's been working good all weekend, and we're glad to do it. My cousin came out and helped me this weekend, and well, for the last 3 weeks. We missed Indy, and he needed to be at a national event win, so we're so happy to be here and be a part of the IHRA program, and they're doing wonders for the alcohol dragsters, and we hope they continue.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Sportsman class finals coming up now, Brett, in a 4:29 Comet Cyclone, ready to sprint down the quarter mile with a Chevy Nova.
Well, every one of the Sportsman Racing finals was amazing at this event. Bill Howell, longtime IHRA supporter, and as you said, an original 4:29.70 Mercury Cyclone, took on the driver who's actually leading the 1190 World Championship point standings right now, Chip Johnson's Chevy Nova. On a 12.90 second index, Howell got there first, but went well under the margin, and Chip Johnson got the win, also under, but not quite as much at 12.82. Now, in the near lane here in the 1190 class final is a young gentleman from the state of Texas, only 18 years old, Jeff Heffler, against Don Barnes, another one of the strongest runners in IHRA racing. This was Heffler's first ever national event final. In the near lane, you can see him pacing Barnes, North Carolina Camaro, all the way to the finish line. He just barely gets there ahead of him with an 11.88 second win at 102 miles an hour. In the 1090 category, in the near lane was Summer Nationals champion Ricky Hall against Alabama racer Jeff Kyle in a battle of Camaros. Kyle's lowrider machine in the far lane had run some of the fastest speeds in the history of this division all day long, almost 130 miles an hour. While Hall had a huge lead 3/4 of the way down the track, Kyle managed to drive around him and win by 3/1000 of a second. Here in the 990 class final, Tom Corbett's incredible 4-speed 65 Plymouth Barracuda took on two-time IHRA world champion and U.S. Nationals winner Fuzzy Norton in his bright red Chevy Camaro. Norton, looking to become the first driver ever to win back-to-back Winston Nationals and Pro-Am Nationals titles, does it by 2/1000 of a second with a 9.901 second win, the closest final ever. In the 890 class, the strangest final round we've seen in years, Dave Strickland against Harry Dixon Jr. When the green light came on, Dixon in the inner lane broke both fuel pumps. Strickland had an automatic win. All he had to do was go slower than 8.90 seconds to take it, but he ran 8.885. He broke out, and Harry Dixon Jr. coasted down the quarter mile in about 3 minutes to take the slowest win on IHRA record, John. In the 790 final, Johnny Cofield and Steve Cohen, the human robots, went at it, and Cofield left the starting line 0.03 of a second after the green light came on, and then took a win at the finish line in a double breakout by 1/1000 of a second to win the 790 class and almost wrap the World Championship.
Three-time factory-modified winner Rick Horde stays in a close lane. Against him will be Tim Freeman of Roan Mountain, Virginia. Small block, 12,000 RPM factory-modified, ready to race. They're up. Engines at 12 grand. They're out of the gate as they sprint towards the quarter mile. The Beretta in the lead, but here comes Rick Horde. Horde starts to make a move. Beretta trying. Horde wins his fourth event at the quarter mile, 8:62, 154.61. Here's the wildest sportsman class in all drag racing, the Top Sportsman Eliminator Final. Buddy McGowan's Burnout 23T Roadster. Here's Wally Stroop in his first Top Sportsman Final ever. Now, you saw the steam go over the hood. He's purging his nitrous oxide system, getting ready to drag race. This is Buddy McGowan and Josh Metz's gorgeous high-tech T-Roadster, 540 cubic inch Chevrolet for power. We now go to the Camaro, a 557 cubic inch nitrous oxide assisted Chevrolet. Ready to drag race. There's a 0.2 of a second handicap in the tree. It's going to be McGowan out in the Roadster first. It's up to Stroop to chase him down. Let's see if Wally Stroop can win his first Top Sportsman Final ever. They're ready. The tree begins its dance. Buddy McGowan out on a good pass, and Stroop is right with him. McGowan has the advantage. Stroop is going to try to catch him. McGowan in the lead. McGowan gets there first, but breaks out. Wally Stroop is the legal winner at 763.9, 181. Final round preparations by Jim Neighbors, and we'll be back with those final round actions from Rockingham in just 8 U.S. Open Nationals. Pro Stock Eliminator Final coming up. And Brett, Morris Johnson Jr. against second-generation drag racer Tim Neighbors.
I'll tell you, as we pointed out in one of the earlier funny car rounds, there's an awful lot of desire going on between these two drivers in this final round. The only IHRA national event victory that Tim Neighbors has ever secured came at this racetrack, albeit in the spring. His father, Calvin Neighbors, was a longtime IHRA Pro Stock driver who also did very well at this particular racetrack. But over in the other lane, his opponent, Morris Johnson Jr., is no slouch. As we pointed out, he was in one IHRA final round before, the first final round of his life, in the 1985 IHRA Winter Nationals. Morris, in the last couple of seasons, has come on so strong with the ex-Jim Ruth Pontiac Trans Am that he's campaigning that he's almost impossible to overlook as a definite threat to the #1 qualifier.
It gets down to consistency. Tim Neighbors, 3 runs within 0.05 of a second with an average 496 lead. Morris Johnson Jr., 3 runs within 0.07 of a second, average 462 lead. Stand by. Let's see who gets closest to the lead. Out of the chute they go, and by 47 thousandths of a second, it's Morris Johnson Jr. Gate job again. Neighbors tries to catch him, doesn't make it. Morris Johnson Jr. wins his first IHRA Pro Stock Championship at 7:47. And let's take a look at that race again, Brett.
That was an absolutely incredible battle. Looking at the starting line launch in slow motion, you can actually see Morris Johnson's 0.04 of a second hole shot. As it turned out, going down the racetrack, Tim Neighbors did not drive around that starting line launch. They were side by side as for the way they had left the starting line. Both drivers running 7.47 seconds.
It's been close so many times.
Oh, yeah. We've just, this year, just got some good equipment. Dave Butner, my crew, they've just done a tremendous job preparing the car for me this weekend and for the last, all summer, really. And we're just getting a little quicker each time and each weekend a little more consistent. And I think that's the key to winning.
The starter spins for the Funny Car Eliminator Final. And it's time to lower the Oldsmobile body around driver Dale Puldey. The Chief Auto Parts Olds preparing for the Funny Car Eliminator Final against Jerry Caminito.
Well, John, we're looking at a study in contrast here. The heavily financed, corporately sponsored Oldsmobile Couple Supreme of Dale Puldey is up against one of the true hard luck racers of the 1987 and 88 seasons. You may not realize it, but from the start of 1987 to the beginning of this season, Jerry Caminito lost 3 straight funny cars in crashes, none of which, by the way, were perpetrated by his own inability to drive. It was the subject of other drivers crossing into the lanes and things like that. Here he is, 12 months after the worst season of his life, in his first national event final round ever. And if you don't think that Caminito will do anything it takes to beat the IHRA's winningest funny car driver, you got another thought coming. Caminito wants to beat that yellow car bad.
And Puldey is not without his motivation as well. He's looking for his 20th IHRA Funny Car win. So it's no prisoner's time as the late afternoon sun becomes something of a factor as the drivers kind of have to look past it as it comes down behind the Christmas tree. But Dale Puldey, on a second dry hop, signals that the Chief Auto Parts Oldsmobile is ready. And look at Caminito. I mean, he's got that thing hopped up with every possible trick that he can play.
Well, as you pointed out, the sun is a factor at this racetrack. It's one of the only drag strips that runs east to west. So in the late afternoon, the drivers are literally running right into the sun at 250 miles an hour. And that is a problem in this particular track. It takes a lot of concentration to get away from the glare that surrounds these drivers inside this cockpit. However, Caminito at this point doesn't really care. As we pointed out earlier, he is an unsponsored driver who is now in his first ever championship final. If he could pull off this upset, it would be literally the crowning moment of his life.
Well, we'll know in just a moment if he's able to bring that off. As you very clearly highlighted the contrast. Dale Puldey in one of the most thoroughly prepared and sponsored cars in the business against Jerry Caminito, and I suppose you could call him the ultimate independent.
Well, it's performances like these that bring major sponsorships. They move into stage for the final round of the U.S. Open. The Christmas tree goes to green, and it's a side-by-side battle. Caminito shakes the tires and crosses the center line, though, and Dale Puldey takes a 5.59-second victory in an uncontested win.
Well, Brett, we'll go back to the starting line now and take a look at that in a replay. You can see Caminito comes out very well. The tires shake. He gets sideways. They cross the center line, and Puldey is the winner.
Well, thank you very much. The guys who really deserve the credit are the crew, Billy Meyer and Chief Auto Parts and Oldsmobile. They all stuck it out with us, and the guys have had a real tough time this year. They lost a car at the first of the year. I started driving it a little bit later, and we've had a lot of troubles. And Dave Fletcher, Dave Settles, Dan Geiger, and Brent Confer have all worked really hard to get this car back on the road again.
Well, I know how much personally you have wanted to have some success this year, and with 2 more races left in the year, this means a whole lot, especially getting ready for those 2 races and 1989.
We all want to win. That's it.
Race fans, if you want the latest in results from IHRA and NHRA National Event Drag Racing, call the Castrol GTX National Events Hotline, 1-900-410-2200. There is a charge for the call. Qualifying results available 8 p.m. Saturday to 8 p.m. Sunday, and finals from 8 p.m. Sunday through 7 p.m. Monday. We're at the Rock, tuning up for the Top Fuel Eliminator Finals. We'll be back with that Carolina. And as we prepare for that final, we look at Gene Snow, the powerful engine of the Amalie Oil Special, about ready to spring into life. every time Gene Snow has gone down the track this weekend, there's been a new track record set. Knowing that is this guy, Paul Smith. Brett?
Well, John, his reaction times have been amazing, and Paul Smith does very well at this racetrack, but I don't even think a perfect reaction time would be enough to beat Gene Snow's consistent 5.1 second runs. Now, earlier, Pat Patterson had a chance to talk with both drivers about what it's going to take to win this all-important championship final.
Be consistent, not smoke the tires, get down through there one more time like we've been running. That ought to take care of it.
Are you happy with this new car's performance here at Rockingham?
I am amazed. It's better than we even thought it would be.
Well, look, going into this final round against Gene Snow, I think we got a good chance here because I tell you what, anything can happen in a drag race. You only got 5 seconds to do it in, and one slip he could lose, or one slip I could lose, but I'm going to try to beat him.
Russian roulette on wheels with Top Fuel Eliminator dragsters. Snow may have tuned this car up, Brett, to run a 5.0. It's about the only thing he hasn't done here this weekend.
And Gene Snow loves to chase records. I would not at all be surprised to see Gene Snow put down the first pass ever under 5.1 seconds at this racetrack.
They stage up and ready to move. Now time for the green light. It comes. No, up in smoke, and look what's going to happen here. There goes Paul Smith, Top Fuel Eliminator champion at 5:39, 265.80. Brett, let's look at that again. Incredible.
It was absolutely amazing. Nobody would have expected that Snow would have taken a chance to overpower the track. The car spun the tires from the instant he hit the throttle, just boiling the tires. Just no traction whatsoever. Smith, perfect traction, hooks up and drives away. You can only imagine what was going through that man's mind. He beat Gene Snow.
All right! Oh, man, I needed that.
You fucking blew tires. Blew him off big time. Well, you had to win. You had to win to get all this emotion out, Paul. What a great victory against the Snowman. He apparently had a lot of problems on the line, and you stayed right in there, and you're here.
You just got to be consistent. In other words, don't try to outrun the other guy. Just try to run a little better every run. You know, in other words, the sponsor deal, it's nice to try to run real hard, but it takes money, a lot of money. And we're non-sponsored, and we just try to make it. Me and my son, this is my son. Here, come here. This is my son, Mike. This is Gene, the kid who works on the car, Keith Bergen.
Keith Bergen all right, guys, when you stood up on the line against the Snowman, did he have a chance?
Well, we hopped it up, and we really thought we could stay with him if he left on him. And he got him that time.
Did I get him?
And Snow messed up.
Yep.
So.
Well, how about it, guys? Is it time to celebrate or what?
You guys.
Hell yeah.
We're ready.
The party starts for Paul Smith and crew as the drag racing veteran, having carted 2 former IHRA funny car wins, now wins the Top Fuel Eliminator Championship as well. And the crowd here at the Rock have seen another fine weekend of drag racing. What they've seen is the closest sportsman racing yet on the circuit this year. What they've also seen are upsets aplenty.